Good morning. So my name is Miss Megan, and I'm going to be making veggie burgers today. So it's a little bit before 11 o'clock. I'm going to wait for people to join. Make sure that I have all my ingredients here. Okay, it looks like we have a few people online, so welcome, thanks for joining. So while we're waiting for more people to join, make sure that you have all your ingredients ready. So these are some of the ingredients we're going to need today. So make sure you've got your can of chickpeas, or if you want you could use black beans or another type of bean. It doesn't have to be chickpeas. So make sure you've got your chickpeas, an onion. You can use either zucchini or carrots, whichever you prefer or whichever you have. Some of our seasonings, we're going to use black pepper and balsamic vinegar. I'm going to use some fresh cilantro. And then we're going to need some ingredients for binding. Oh, good morning. Looks like Taina's with me. Hi, Taina. Thanks for joining. So some of the other ingredients we need are an egg for binding, or if you want to make this vegan, you can use flax egg, and I can talk about how to make that if you're not familiar, or chia egg, that's another option. And then we also need another flavor that we're going to use is cumin, ground cumin, and then we're going to use lots of garlic, of course. And then we're also going to use oats that I'm going to grind in my spice grinder or coffee grinder here. So oats help with binding as well. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining. So make sure you have all these ingredients ready to go. Good morning. So a lot of times when you make burgers, especially veggie burgers, or something like meatloaf, you'll use breadcrumbs. So instead of breadcrumbs, I'm going to use oats because that's a whole grain option. So it's a little bit more nutritious. So let's give it another minute. I think it's probably only just 11 o'clock now. Okay. So gathering your ingredients and then also gathering whatever toppings you're going to want to put on your veggie burger. So we'll talk about those as well. Okay, so the first thing we need to do before we start cooking every time is we need to wash our hands, right? So I already washed my hands, but make sure you've got nice clean hands, especially because this recipe is kind of hands-on. Like, I'm gonna mix my patties with my hands. So you want to make sure you've got nice clean hands. Good morning, I think Michelle just joined. Thanks for joining. So first thing we do is wash our hands, and then the next thing, hopefully you have all your ingredients ready to go, but as you're getting everything together, make sure you drain and rinse your chickpeas. So I did that already. So if you have your can of chickpeas, or good morning, Michelle. So depending on what bean you're using, if you're using chickpeas or a can of black beans or white beans or pinto, whatever type of beans you're using, go ahead and drain and rinse those. So as you can see, I've just got a can of ShopRite chickpeas. So it's especially important to drain something like this because normally I get the no salt added canned beans or canned vegetables, but these were really cheap at ShopRite. These were on sale. So you definitely want to rinse these first because they're going to be packed in sodium. So since I didn't buy the no salt added version, I definitely wanted to drain and rinse those. Oh, looks like Margaret's watching. Morning, Margaret. Thanks for joining. So, good morning, Nikki. Thanks for joining. So, okay, so we've washed our hands. We've gathered our ingredients. I'll go over them quickly again, make sure everybody's got everything you need to start cooking. So we've got our canned beans, whichever bean you prefer. We've got a small onion. You can use a yellow onion or a red onion. I'm going to use a yellow onion. So either a small onion or half of a large onion. Then we also need either a zucchini or a carrot, whichever you have or whichever you prefer. We also need some flavorings like ground pepper, and I'm going to use balsamic vinegar. You could use another type of vinegar, depending on what you have. I'm going to use fresh cilantro. Oh, you can't read. Well, I will hold it closer, but the other thing I'll do is at the end I'll post the recipe too. So I'll make sure that the full recipe card gets posted. So I know my handwriting is kind of messy, so I apologize. But we'll go through it as we go. So I'm going to use fresh cilantro, and then I'm also going to use an egg. If you're vegan, you can use a flax egg or a chia egg, or you could also use peanut butter or almond butter, just something that'll help bind it. Oh, I need to turn it. So actually, I don't think I can do that on an Android. So I see, it's not a mirror image. Okay, well, I will not bother to hold that up anymore then. I apologize. So I'll just tell you what else is in it. So we're going to use an egg or a flax egg. We're going to use some ground cumin. And then I'm going to do like 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. So however much garlic you want to use. And then I'm going to use a cup of whole oats. So instead of breadcrumbs, oats are a more nutritious option. So you could either use breadcrumbs, or if you have oats, you can use those as well. And then you can also add things like jalapeno if you want to make it spicier. I'm going to leave that out today, but I might add a little cayenne. Alright, so without further ado, let's get started. So hopefully you've washed your hands and drained and rinsed your beans. So we're going to mix everything in one bowl. So you just need one bowl. So the first thing I'm going to do is mash the chickpeas. So you can use a potato masher, you can use a fork. If you have a mortar and pestle, you can use the pestle to mash. But I'll get started with a potato masher. And what I'm going to do is not mash it all the way. I'm going to leave it a little bit chunky to give it a little bit more texture. Okay? So this is the fun part, is mashing the chickpeas. So you can go ahead, mash those up, but leave a little bit of some of the beans whole or partially whole, so you don't have to totally puree it and make it smooth. Okay. Alright, so I've mashed my chickpeas, so it can kind of look like this. Right, so we've got kind of a mush, but there's still some chickpeas that are still kind of whole. Alright, so we've got our mashed beans. And while I'm doing this, oh, good morning, Sanja. Thanks for joining. Now, I don't think I can see all of the comments from my phone, so I apologize if I don't respond to every comment, but I can see some of them popping up. So, while we're doing this today, if you're able to comment and tell me if you're using a different type of bean, for example. So some of you might prefer black beans, or you might prefer pinto beans. You could even use lentils. So if you're doing something else, let me know what you're doing. Okay. So we've got our mashed chickpeas. I see someone put they love peas, a good source of protein. Yeah, you could throw, and they're sweet too, right? So you could throw some peas in. I don't think I'm going to use those in mine. Okay, so we've got our mashed chickpeas, right? And now what we need to do is cut up a few other ingredients and add them to our chickpea and mix it all together. So the next thing we're going to do is, I know I do this every time, but in case we have any new viewers today, we're going to go over knife skills, right? So anybody who is a knife skills expert, good morning, Victoria, thanks for joining. So anybody here who's a knife skills expert, if you want to type in the chat what we need to do, feel free to help me go over that together. So, and hopefully you can see my cutting board okay. Alright, so what I want to do now is just go over the very fundamentals of knife skills, handling a knife safely. Because if you can chop things safely and quickly, that makes everything in the kitchen much easier. You don't need to rely on a food processor, and it just speeds up the whole process if you feel comfortable with a knife, right? So first, how do we hold the knife that we're using? And for families at home, so if you've got kids with you, like Taina, if you're there cooking, you can use a plastic knife or a butter knife, right? So you don't have to use a big old chef's knife like I'm using. So whatever kind of knife you have. So how do we hold our knife safely, right? So for me, I'm a lefty, so I know I'm in the minority here, but I'm gonna hold the knife with my left hand. Oh, I see. So okay, so I'm gonna address what Nikki put in a second. Thank you for typing that in. So yes, we want to hold our knife with our dominant hand, and we want to hold it nice and firm, like we're shaking someone's hand. Okay, so nice firm grip, and you want to be closer to the blade, not farther away. Some people might think, oh, well, I want to be farther away from the blade to be safer, but then you actually have less control. So you want to hold it right up at the blade with a nice firm grasp, right? So that's how we hold our knife. Now, what are some good cutting motions? So this isn't Top Chef. We're not on a cooking show where they do all this crazy vertical up and down cutting, right? So in general, you want to keep your knife on the cutting board. So either you can do this sawing back and forth motion, where your knife is in contact, or you could also do, so I have a big knife, right? And I prefer to use a big knife, even for something small like garlic, but you can use a smaller knife or you can use a paring knife. So in general, most of the time you're going to either saw back and forth, or you're going to do this rocking seesaw motion, right, like that. But either way, my knife is always in contact with the cutting board. It's not flying and going crazy, right? All right, so now I see that Nikki and Josiah, they know the next step. So how do we hold the item we're cutting? So for example, if I want to hold this pepper safely, and I don't want to add any fingertips to my veggie burgers, so how do I hold this safely? And Josiah knows the drill. We want to hold it with a bear claw, right? So whatever you're cutting, in general, you want to hold it with a bear claw. And you can add some sound effects if that helps. You need a nice fierce bear claw. And that way, you're protecting your fingertips, right? So I can't lose any fingertips here, right? And then the last thing I'll say about knife skills, and then I think we're all going to be experts here, is that in general, when you're cutting, you can kind of angle away as well. Instead of straight up and down, right, perpendicular to the cutting board, you can kind of angle this way and cut. And that adds some extra protection for your fingers, right? So let's go ahead and cut a few ingredients. We are going to need to cut an onion, right? So I'm holding my onion with my bear claw. Now I'm using a small yellow onion. You could also use a red onion, or you could use half of a large onion. If you only have big onions, you can use half of one and save half for later. So I see Michelle put, fingertips are not vegetarian. Yeah, that's a good point. So we want to keep this, a vegetarian recipe. Alright, so I've sliced my onion, and now what I'm doing is stacking it and just cutting it into small little squares. So I'm dicing the onion, right? Hopefully it doesn't make you cry, but a few tips for that. If your knife is really sharp, it'll cut through the onion easier and release less of that gas that makes you cry. So you want to make sure your knife is really sharp. Sometimes chilling the onion in the fridge also helps a little bit. Okay, so we've got our onion. So that's going to go in with the chickpeas. I think I'm done with my masher. Alright, so everything's just going to get combined in this one big bowl. Alright, so we add our onion. And I am tearing up a little bit. I think I need to sharpen my knife, but it's not too bad. Okay. Alright. And the next thing I'm going to do is chop up some garlic. So this is a good... Oh, I see someone said that they love chickpeas. Me too. So if you didn't see it before, I've also done a hummus family fun in the kitchen, so you can go back and watch that. So that's made with chickpeas, but chickpeas are so versatile, right? You can use chickpeas for so many things, which is great. And especially if you just have a bunch of cans, you know, it's an affordable thing to keep in your pantry for a long time. So that's great. So I'm chopping up the garlic, and I'm going to use 5 cloves, because, you know, you can never have too much garlic, in my opinion. So I already chopped up a lot of it, but let me show you. So there are different ways to peel garlic, but I'll show you what I do. So I like to take my knife on the flat side and then push down on the garlic, and that helps release the peel or the wrapper. Okay, so that's an easy way to take the skin off of a garlic clove. Okay. Alright, so we've peeled our garlic, we're chopping it, and this is a good example of the rocking motion, right? The kind of seesaw motion that we were talking about. Okay? So sometimes you're going to saw back and forth, but for garlic, you know, I'm doing this seesaw motion, but my knife is always in contact with the cutting board. So you don't have to use 5 cloves, you can use less than that, certainly, but I tend to use more than the recipe calls for, so. But you could use 2 or 3 if you prefer. Okay, so we've got our chopped up garlic, so that can get thrown in the bowl. Alright, and then the next thing we're going to add, let's add some zucchini or carrot. So, depending on what you have, I have carrots. So I actually have, so for some of you this might be new, some of you maybe not, but I grew these carrots, and what do you notice about them? So I've got red and yellow carrots, right? So carrots aren't just orange like they are at the grocery store, they come in different colors, which I think is really cool. I didn't know that when I was younger. So it's fun to grow them. They're really easy to grow at home, and then you get to see all these different colors. So, and then there are also different colors on the inside too. Yeah, different colors. So if you're using zucchini, I would use a small one, and make sure you just squeeze out the water, because otherwise your veggie burgers will be too wet. Okay, so zucchini is very moist, very wet. So you're going to want to squeeze out some of that moisture. If you're using a carrot, you don't have to worry about it, right? Yeah, so the carrots, all different colors. So did you know that carrots can be purple, red, orange, yellow, white? They come in all colors, which is really, really nifty. So I've got a grater here, right? So you can grate right into the bowl. So either you're using a zucchini or you're using a carrot. Now, if you're grating, just watch your fingers. This is another way to lose fingertips, and we don't want to do that. So just watch what you're doing, which was not what I was doing. So watch what you're doing and make sure you don't scrape any of your fingers. All right, so we're grating. I think I'm gonna use, I have very small carrots, as you probably noticed, so I'm gonna use 2. But you can probably just use 1 carrot or 1 small zucchini, okay? So we're grating that in. You could also chop this. You don't have to grate it. You could chop it up really small, dice it, mince it. You could use a food processor if you want. For any of these steps, if you want to speed things up, you can always use a food processor. Okay, so far, let's just review what we've got so far. We've got our canned beans that are mashed. We've got small onion. We've got garlic. And we've got either carrot or zucchini, right? So hopefully we're all on that step. Okay, I think that's good. Actually, I might chop them up a little bit more, but okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is add, well, why don't we keep cutting? I'm gonna add some cilantro. So I know not everybody likes cilantro, but if you have fresh cilantro, you can use that. You could also use parsley if you like parsley better, or if that's what you happen to have on hand. So I'm going to use just a small bowl of cilantro. So it's definitely not a whole bunch. You only need part of a bunch. So my recipe calls for 3 tablespoons. This might not even be 3 tablespoons, so we'll see once I chop it up. So again, for something like an herb, I'm using this seesaw motion to cut it up. So it's releasing this really nice smell right now. So I've got the garlic and the cilantro and the onion smells. Okay. Alright, so we should have about 3 tablespoons of cilantro. You could do a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on how much you like these things. So let's see what we've got. I think I don't even have 3 right here. So I'm gonna add 1, 2, it's about 3. Could probably use a little bit more, but maybe I'll add more. A little bit. Okay. So, are we all on the same page here with our ingredients? Is anybody using, okay, so I see Maureen, hi Maureen, asking what type of beans did you use and are canned okay? Yeah, so I'm using canned chickpeas. So I drained and rinsed them. Canned is totally fine as long as you rinse them first, especially if you do what I did. So these were 55 cents at ShopRite, so I couldn't resist that deal. So they're not no salt added. So you definitely want to rinse them first to get rid of the sodium, right? But normally I buy no salt added chickpeas. But you could also use black beans or white beans or really whatever your favorite bean is. But I usually use chickpeas, and I think that's got a nice flavor and pairs well with these ingredients, although I imagine that black beans would taste good too with all these flavors. So, but that's a fun way to make the same recipe but make it taste different, so you're not having the same thing every time. Is, you know, one time you could use chickpeas, the next time you could use black beans, so it makes it more interesting, but you're basically following the same recipe, right? Alright, so I think we've got enough cilantro now. Just gonna throw that in. So, what's next on our list? Let's see. Alright, I think the next thing I'm gonna add, here, let me grab this. Okay, I think the next thing I'm gonna add are the ground oats. So again, what I have are just a container of old-fashioned oats, really cheap at ShopRite. It's the ShopRite brand, so it's whole oats, right? And so they look like They look like that. They're still whole. And we don't want to throw them in whole. So what I'm going to do is put them in my coffee grinder and make it into basically an oat flour. So again, you could probably do this in a food processor. I'm going to do it in my little coffee grinder here because it's kind of fun to use. So you want a cup of oats. It only takes a few seconds. Okay, that looks pretty good. So that was actually only a half a cup. So you can see now it's a flour. So I'm going to dump that in. Alright, and I'm going to do another half a cup because I can only fit a half a cup at a time in my little coffee grinder. We're done with our cutting board for now. I'm going to move that out of the way. Okay, so we've got 1 cup of oat flour. So what does this do? So just like breadcrumbs, it helps bind it together, but oats, because they're a whole grain, it's a little bit more nutritious than breadcrumbs. But you can use whatever you have at home. Alright, so let's see what we're up to. So we've got our canned beans, our onion, our zucchini or carrot, our cilantro, our oats, and our garlic. So the next thing I'll add is an egg. So I'm going to use an egg, just a regular old egg, but when we make this at the Conservancy, or if you have vegan family members, what you can do instead is make a flax egg. So has anybody ever made a flax egg or a chia egg before? I know that you've probably, if you've been to the Conservancy, you've probably experienced it in one of our cooking programs. So let me just wash my hands. So if you want the equivalent of an egg, all you have to do is take a tablespoon of flax seeds or flax meal, but what I do is I get flax seeds and then grind them up in the spice grinder again. So a tablespoon of flax meal and 3 tablespoons of water, and mix them together. And you just need to let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then it'll make a similar consistency to an egg. So that's a vegan alternative. You can also, I see Maria saying chia. Yeah, so you could also use chia seeds. There are different things you can use. But that's a substitute for an egg. Or if you run out of eggs and you're baking something, and in a quick fix you can make a flax egg or a chia egg. So I'm gonna add that in. You can also use, again, this is for binding purposes, you could use peanut butter or almond butter or something like that instead. Alright, so now we just have a few flavors to add, and then we're going to make our patties and get cooking. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about superhero foods and other things that we're doing at the Conservancy while they cook. So now we're going to add 2 teaspoons of black pepper. Okay, so we know that when we're measuring, you want a level spoonful. So 1. You can scrape it against the side if that helps. Hey Ramona, thanks for joining. I assume Nehemiah's there too. Thanks for cooking with us. Okay, so we added 2 teaspoons of black pepper. And then the next thing we're going to add is 1 teaspoon of cumin. And yes, I'm just double dipping because I don't really care in my kitchen. So I'm just going to use the same spoon. And we want 1 level teaspoon of cumin. You can kind of shake it on the inside to get it level-ish, and it doesn't have to be precise. I know we've talked about this before, that in something like this you can use more or less. It doesn't have to be exact unless you're baking. Alright, so we've added our cumin, and I think the last thing to add is balsamic vinegar, and I think we're good. So we've got our balsamic vinegar. And you could use another type of vinegar, so if you want to tell me, if you don't have balsamic vinegar at home, you could use a different flavor agent. So if you use something else, let me know what you try and if it comes out good. All right, so I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. So we got 1, 2, 3, okay? So we add that in. All right, so I think we have all of our ingredients now. I'm gonna sprinkle in a little bit of cayenne. And if your family likes it spicy, you could add jalapeno if you have that. I don't have any jalapeno right now. So I'm just gonna shake in some cayenne. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is mix this up and make it into patties. So I'm gonna get my cutting board back. And I'm gonna put patties on my cutting board that I was already using. And this recipe, you can make 6 patties. So that's a good size. So I'm just gonna mix this with my hands. You could probably also use some kind of utensil if you want. But I think we do have everything. So let me just quickly review while I'm making my 6 patties. So we've got our canned beans, right? Our onion, zucchini or carrot, pepper, balsamic vinegar, cilantro, an egg or a flax egg, cumin, garlic, and ground oats or oat flour. I see Maud is asking about salt. I actually don't put any salt in this recipe. I mean, I usually do when I cook, but I don't think this recipe really needs it. It's got so much flavor in it. I mean, if you want to add a little bit of salt, you can, but you could also try it without it and see if you think it has enough flavor without it. For me, I think, you know, with the garlic and the vinegar and the cilantro and cumin, that it's got plenty of flavor. But if you want to add a couple of dashes of salt to kind of bring out all the flavors, you could do that too. So in general, it's not the salt shaker at home that we need to be so worried about with sodium. It's eating lots of processed foods that can lead to too much sodium. So, okay, so now what I'm gonna do, and hopefully your hands are clean and you're really getting in there, is I'm gonna make 6 patties. Okay, so it's kind of like how you make meatloaf, right? It's easiest to just go in there with your hands. So Nikki wants to know how much oats. So 1 cup of oats. So I did 1 cup of whole oats, and then I put them in the coffee grinder to make oat flour. Or if you're using a food processor, yeah, so 1 cup. So that'll help these bind together. So we don't want them to be too wet. We don't want them to be too dry and crumble and fall apart, right? So hopefully your mixture is a good consistency based on these ingredients. I think mine are okay. All right, so I'm making my 6 patties. So now what you can do, I'm not gonna make all 6 at once. I think I'm just gonna make 2. With the rest of these, what I'm gonna do is individually freeze them. And then I can, hey Erin, thanks for joining. So I'm gonna freeze 4 of these individually. And then I can pull those out later when I just need to, when I need a quick meal. They're already made. All I have to do is pop them in the oven or on top of the stove or on the grill, however you want to cook them, right? So we've already done this prep work, but you don't have to make all 6 right now. Okay, so I've got 6 patties. You don't want them to be too flat. Try to make them even though, in the same thickness. Okay. So now, last thing we have to do is cook them and eat them. So I'm just gonna make 2, and let me wash my hands quickly. Okay, so you might be able to see, or actually probably not, but I've got my, I've got my cast iron skillet on top of the stove. That's how I'm gonna make them. If you want to throw these on the grill, you can. If you want to bake them in the oven, you can, but I don't want to turn my oven on right now. It's still pretty hot out, so oven is staying off. So I'm going to make them in my cast iron skillet. So what I'm doing now is I have some olive oil in the skillet. I'm letting it heat up a little bit. And so then I'm going to put in 2 patties, and they should sear on the outside a little, and that will also help them stick together. So what I'm going to aim for is kind of a sear on the outside, and then softer on the inside. So that should make a tasty veggie burger. Okay? So what I would recommend is cook them about 3 minutes per side. Alright, so I'm just going to put in 2. Okay, I can hear them starting to sizzle a little already. Alright, so 3 minutes per side. Let's see if I can use my, put on a timer here. Okay. So how many times for fry? So I would let them cook about 3 minutes per side. Maria, I think that's what you're asking. So about 3 minutes per side. But you just want them to turn brown on the outside. They should have a nice brown, not char, but they should be brown on the outside, but then still soft on the inside. Okay? So while those are sizzling over there, I also want to show you what I got for my toppings, and then talk a little bit about superhero foods. So I did this in advance so that as soon as these are ready, I can just dive right in and eat them. So if you, while yours are cooking, if you want to get your toppings, now obviously you can do whatever toppings you like, but if you can see what I have here, I've got my whole wheat bun. You can skip the bun entirely and do lettuce, you know, like a lettuce wrap. We've done those before. Or just use a fork. You don't need anything, right? I've got some avocado and spinach, cucumber, some sliced tomato, and red onion. And I think that's gonna be a tasty meal right there. So that's what I've got for mine. So while these are cooking, I just wanted to review superhero foods. I know we do this every time, so feel free to type in the chat if you remember what some of them are. So I see a question, can I cook 2 and freeze the other 4, or does freezing change the texture? So the freezing, it might change the texture a little bit, but it's still good enough. I would just make sure you freeze them individually so they don't all stick together, right? So you could put them in individual sandwich bags, or put them on a cookie sheet and freeze them, and then put them into one big bag, however you want to do it. The texture should still be okay. The issue that can come up is if you put them in the fridge, they will get more moisture, and so they could become mushier if you keep them in the fridge. So that's another thing you can do, though. If you made these veggie burger patties and you're not ready to cook them yet, like let's say I'm prepping this in the afternoon, but then I want to make them for dinner tonight, what I would do is don't make them into individual patties, keep the batter together and put that in the fridge, and then make the individual patties, just because of the moisture in the fridge. But yeah, I mean, freezing them should work. They may not be quite as good, but they should be good enough. So let me keep an eye on the time. Oh, they're almost ready to flip. Okay, so I'm seeing a nice brown char on one side now, so that's what I was going for, so that looks good. Okay, so a little bit about superhero foods. So does anybody remember what some of our superhero foods that fight lead are? So I'll give you a hint. If you want to prevent lead uptake in the body, especially for our younger folks who are under the age of 5, right? You want to make sure that you're getting enough calcium, iron, and vitamin C. So, can anybody think of any foods that contain those nutrients? So calcium, I think most of us, ooh, I see someone put a broccoli picture, yeah. So broccoli is a good source of calcium. Dairy in general is a good source of calcium. So for example, for your veggie burger, maybe you want to put some cheese on it. You'd be getting some superhero calcium. But you can also get calcium from broccoli and leafy greens like kale and things like that, right? Okay, so that's calcium, number one. How about iron? What foods are a good source of iron? So in this recipe, beans. Beans are a good source of iron, right? So, beans in this case are superhero food, our main ingredient of our veggie burgers, right? You can also get iron from spinach, right? And then also red meat and chicken as well. Oh, giving your house a nice smell. Yeah, mine too. I know, it makes the whole kitchen smell good while they're cooking. Okay, and then last but not least, so I see Maria put lentils. Yeah, lentils are another good source of iron. So any type of beans, whether it's chickpeas, black beans, lentils. I see Maureen put spinach. Yeah, so those are some of our sources of iron. And then how about vitamin C? So why is vitamin C a superhero food? It helps our body absorb iron. So iron and vitamin C work together, right? So what are some good sources of vitamin C? I think we normally think of orange juice or oranges. So citrus is a good source. Oranges, grapefruit, lemon. But in general, colorful fruits and vegetables, especially red. So for example, the tomatoes I'm putting on my veggie burger, tomatoes are a good source of vitamin C. Bell peppers, especially the red, orange, yellow, so bell peppers are a good source. Also strawberries. So if you want to have some strawberries for dessert, those are a good source of vitamin C, right? So we've got a few superhero foods in this recipe today, which is always good. So I think they're done cooking. Okay, so hopefully yours looks, kind of like this. So it's got some brown on it, right? But it's not charred to a crisp, hopefully. Let me take the other one out too. Okay, so our veggie burgers are done. I know mine smells good, it looks good, so I'm excited to eat it. I've got all these fixings here, right? So let me take a quick bite and see how it tastes. And let me know if you're trying yours now. Let me know if you like it. Okay, just need some water. Okay, well mine tastes pretty good. I'm happy with how it turned out. I see Maria said that it's good, so I'm glad to see that. Delicious. Good. Okay, well, the last thing I want to mention, so we talked about superhero foods. I want to mention that we still have slots open in our camp. I know we're already a couple weeks into our virtual summer camp, but if any of you out there are looking for a camp where you don't have to leave your house, you can do it through the computer with us. I can put the link for that in the comments. So if you're interested, type that in the comments, let us know. But you can find it on our website, our camp registration form. So we still have a few spots open. We're happy to have you join us at any point. I think we have 3 weeks left, so plenty of time to join if you're interested in our camp. It's a environmental green STEAM camp, so we do STEM and art and nature activities, and it's been a lot of fun so far. So if you're interested, please sign up on our website. Our farm stand is open, many of you may know that. So definitely visit our farm stand. You can order in advance if you'd like, and you can find the schedule and order form on our website also. We have farm stands at our office, at our farm, at City Hall in Newark, so lots of options available there as well. So I think that's everything I wanted to talk about today, so thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoy your veggie burger. Please share pictures in the comments, or share a picture on social and tag us at CityBloom87, and we'll share it too. And if you have any other comments, you know, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you changed, if you think you'll make it again, if you learned something new today, please feel free to type all of that in the comments. We love your feedback. And I hope you'll join me for the next one. So thank you so much. Enjoy your veggie burgers. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And thanks for tuning in. Bye, everyone.